1 Samuel picks up the grand narrative about Israel from the book of Judges. From a bird's eye view of the Old Testament story, 1 Samuel is the beginning of the final section. Here Israel becomes a monarchy, centralizes in Jerusalem, then divides into two kingdoms, the northern and the southern. The world around them becomes a playground for emerging superpowers, and both kingdoms must play political games to survive. After a long period of ups and downs, much like that of Judges, where the character of Israel as the people of God is damaged and then restored, both kingdoms are destroyed and exiled, first the northern and then the southern. 1 Samuel has three main characters: Samuel, the last judge, Saul, the first king, and David, who replaces him. It starts from the birth of Samuel and ends with the death of Saul. Another important feature of the book, though not exactly a character, is the Ark of the Covenant. Quite some space is devoted to moving it around. It eventually must come to Jerusalem as the key part of the process of establishing that city as the centre of Israel. It will eventually be housed in the temple which Solomon will build. Thus, three things are permanently brought together: David as king, the city of Jerusalem, and the presence of the ark. Even after David dies, Jerusalem is destroyed and the ark lost. These three things live on in Israelite memory, with the temple itself replacing the ark. These then become images of the hope of restoration. 1 Samuel begins with the sort of corruption we have come to expect from the end of Judges. The sons of the priest Eli behave so atrociously that God not only declares that he will kill them, but breaks off the line of Aaron from the high priesthood. Their main offence is, as 2:17 has it, treating the offerings of the Lord with contempt. They take more than they should, they insist on it being roasted, and they take the fat which belongs to the Lord. In doing all this, they threaten violence. Finally, the various women at the sanctuary, whether helping with menial tasks or there because of some vow, become targets for the brothers' lust, and thus something akin to a pagan temple prostitution is practiced. Eli does scold them, but the Lord obviously thinks he should have done more. He is the priest and their father. It is his responsibility. The oracle of doom is given by someone described in 2:27 as a man of God. This description of an unknown prophet will recur in 1 Kings, but it is worth noting that it happened this way and not in a dream. As Israel begins to centralize and institutionalize, there is the danger that the people will lose connection with Yahweh. The role of prophecy becomes much more vital during this time. Prophets will begin to challenge and advise and even fight as 1 Samuel proceeds through to the end of 2 Kings. Prophets or priests were always consulted for matters such as battle, but now they begin to appear as challengers and critics in the emerging politics of Israel and the wider world. The oracle this man of God delivers is very comprehensive. Almost everyone will die. Indeed, the sign for Eli is that both his sons will die on the same day. The massacre of the rest will follow in chapter 22, and the one predicted to escape is Abiathar. Later, however, he will be replaced by Zadok, who will start a new line of high priests, and so the Aaronite priesthood will be over. But the wonderfulness of these 2 chapters is, of course, Hannah and her son Samuel. Their story has echoes with other parts of Scripture. Her being barren and taunted by a successful rival is like Sarah and Hagar. Her husband Elkanah asking if his love is not worth more than 10 sons is like the blessing of the women on Naomi, saying that Ruth's love is worth more than 7 sons. Her dedication of Samuel as a Nazirite is like Samson. Hannah's joy is so great and the moment so significant that she even has a song of celebration, joining the ranks of Moses and Miriam and Deborah. Her song, especially between verses 4 to 8, emphasize the power of God to reverse any situation. In this there is a resemblance to Mary's Magnificat in Luke 1, especially in verses 52 to 53. Mary thanks God for looking with favour on the lowliness of his servant, and in Hannah's prayer in 1:11 she repeatedly calls herself a servant. Hannah herself is rewarded by the Lord with more sons and daughters, though it is touchingly recorded in verse 19 that she would make him a little robe every year and bring it to him when they came to sacrifice. As for Samuel, in verse 21 it says he grew up in the presence of the Lord, which is a wonderful statement. And in verse 26 it says that the boy Samuel continued to grow both in stature and in favour with the Lord and with the people. This is also picked up by Luke to describe Jesus in Luke 2:52. A final comment is for how these two stories have been told. The stories necessarily belong together, but they have been cleverly interwoven in the telling, so as to emphasize and contrast two things. First is the huge sacrifice Hannah offers in her dedication of her only son to the Lord. This is contrasted with the outrageous selfishness and contempt for the sacrifices to the Lord by Hophni and Phinehas. Second, the growing role of prophecy represented by the growing up of Samuel, and the now crumbling priesthood of Aaron represented by Eli.